Talent will get you to the top, but it won't keep you there. John Maxwell wrote an entire book on it. It's called Talent is Never Enough. You probably should know that if you're in leadership, but I can tell you, when you start to rise up, the higher you go, the harder it gets. Not because it's a tougher job, but because more people are looking. And that's what I want to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders. Stay tuned.
Master the Story Power Method to captivate your audience, improve workplace culture, and 10x your fundraising.
Scan the QR code to book your first coaching call or visit storypowercoach.com. Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at storypoweracademy.com for leadership development and communication skills training.
I'm J. Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. It's pretty amazing when you see people struggle in life. I don't mean that hardship is necessarily a bad thing. What I mean is that there are times in life when we feel like the world is against us. Everything is conspiring against me. And because it is, life is really hard for me and I don't like it like this. That's not always true. In fact, it's true that sometimes life is conspiring against us so that we grow, so that we get better, so that we get tested. But I'm going to tell you something you may not be familiar with. The hard times are a good test. When you got nothing, when you got no money, when you don't have the friends that you want, you don't have the career you want, you don't have the success you want, when all the things that you feel like I should have, I deserve, I'm entitled to, I have earned, are not there. It's really easy to get down on yourself and to get down on life, but those are the times that really test what you're made of, your tenacity, your resolve, your commitment. But that test is nothing compared to the test that a leader faces when the promotion comes. I'm telling you, when the promotion comes, when the pay rate comes, when the new title comes, when the new opportunity comes, when you actually do scale your business to a new level, when you go from where you've been, just kind of getting by, getting the bills paid, keeping up. Maybe you went from, just getting by to getting by okay, and then boom, something happens. I was listening to a guy today say that, for years he kind of struggled in that, I don't even know if we're going to be able to pay the mortgage this month kind of season. And then out of nowhere, a new book that he wrote has 150,000 sales in the first print. It's a New York Times bestseller. How did that happen? He's been doing this for years. He's been writing books and speaking and leading people, but nothing like this. And see, that's when the real test comes. The real test comes when you have success, you have influence, you have power. And now you've got to see if you have the ability to maintain your integrity. Watch a tyrant at work. And I don't just mean a tyrant like somebody who's a little bit of a narcissist personality. I mean like we've had plenty of history with global tyrants. They take over a nation, they take over a country, and suddenly it's everything's going to be my way. They have the power to put you in prison. They have a power to silence you. They have the power to control your wealth, your investments. I mean, there was a certain family that came in and took over in a little island just not too far from America. And when they took over that island, literally, I've watched the footage of this newly elected president in his first year walking through small towns and large cities and going, ooh, that's a really pretty building. Make that one ours. Expropriation, literally taking from the people who owned, eliminating, removing private property rights because he's in charge. Who's going to stop him? And there were people whose lives were ended because they tried to. They defied him. They didn't do what he wanted. What he wanted is what happened. And he had the power and the will to enforce it. And the challenge that we run into in leadership as we grow is that as we shift that position from I'm just barely getting by, I'm working in the middle of everybody else, I'm in the huddle, I'm in the group. John Maxwell calls it the people pile. When you're stuck in the people pile, you do what all the people do. You move as a herd. You go where they go. You do what the mass does. It's kind of a mob mentality of survival. When you begin to get out of the people pile, you get one limb out, you get the rest of yourself out. Once you get out of the people pile, there's a different level of expectation on you. Again, I can refer to the CEO who was caught on the kiss cam with somebody who wasn't his wife. There's a whole lot of people upset about that, a whole lot of people whose lives were altered in that moment. But if that individual didn't have the power, the position, the financial wealth, the control of other people's future and destiny in the palm of his hand, nobody would have cared. Some would have looked at him and went, good for you, man, having a little extra fun. But when you've got so many lives and futures that are kind of in your wake, the level of responsibility you have when you're in that kind of position is exponentially higher. What people expect of you, the number of people that are watching you, the way they expect you to behave, all of that changes. Again, surely the trials come along when you're looking at your bills and you're going, I don't even know if I can keep the mortgage paid. How am I going to keep the lights on? I get it. That's a hard test. Been there. I know exactly what that's like. But the harder test is when you have the power and no one can check it. These societal pressures that come along when you feel like, well, who's going to tell me no? And even if they disagree with me, even if they try to hold me accountable, what can they really do to me? Now, there's an interesting dynamic in humans, an odd, well, it's a lack of balance is really what it is. Because on the one side, you've got the tyrannical kind of a leader, and on the other side, you've got these leaders who are constant people pleasers. Well, the constant people pleaser, they're surrounded by friends. They have loads and loads and loads of influence. They can speak into a crowd and everybody wants to applaud them and bring them to the front. And you might go back a few episodes and listen to the one where I talk about don't let other people steal your platform, because they'll grind you into dust and cast you aside. These people pleasers, the ones that not just go along to get along, but the ones who sell out their own convictions, what they really live for, what they really want, what they consider their success is when everybody likes them. Well, that's one end of the seesaw, if you will. The other end of the seesaw is, I don't care if you like me or not, I'm going to get my way. And if I have to step on your head to reach the next rung of the ladder, expect your head to be stepped on, because I'm going up the ladder and I don't care who I take with me. There's another phrase John Maxwell uses a lot. He says, if it's lonely at the top, you're not doing it right. If you're charging ahead as a leader and there's no one following you, you're not leading, you're just taking a walk. That's the tyrannical leader. That's the one who walks for as long and as far and as powerfully as they can, and they don't care who or what they leave in the wake. They're not worried about the social changes, the cultural changes, the impacts to people's lives. They couldn't care less as long as they get what they want. Again, the other end of that spectrum is, I do what's going to get me the most approval. I'm going to do what's going to get me the most applause. I'm going to be a clown on a unicycle if that's what makes people look and clap. I'm going to be like the toddler who just wants the affection of the parents and the aunties and the uncles. I want everybody to look at me, all eyes on me, because that makes me feel good. And I'm going to do what pleases the people, whether it's right or wrong, good or bad, profitable or not profitable, none of those things matter. I'm going to lead in a way that gets everyone's approval. That, my friends, is a trap. In fact, some would call it the thirst trap. You're going to find yourself in a place where if you don't get everybody's approval, you feel like you've done something wrong. Which means making the hard decisions about layoffs, investments, changing directions. There was a great interview between Myron Golden and Benjamin Hardy, and they talked about a business that wanted to scale. Now, this was apparently a coaching client or someone that Benjamin Hardy had advised. Dr. Benjamin Hardy was working with this guy to scale his business. And just going through that coaching routine of asking the questions, well, if you knew the answer, what would it be? Hey, you've thought about this, obviously. You've kind of noodled on it. Let me poke you in your noodle a little bit and let's see where that goes. And so they went through this routine of answering questions, and he said, you know, if you wanted to scale your business, what would you do? And the guy gave him some answers, and he said, so why don't you do that? I mean, you see the financial upside, you see the growth potential, you see that you would become, you know, one of one in your industry. That's always very profitable. And the guy said, well, the reason I am reluctant to do it, and to the best of my knowledge hasn't yet done it, is because he employs a few hundred people, and he has a great affinity for the people that he employs. He has great affection for them. They have great affection for him. And he said, if I go through this scaling process, I will only need about a third of those people. Now, my revenues, my gross revenues and my gross profit will be about 20x what they are right now. But I won't need all the people. And so I'll make a whole lot more money, but I'll put a whole lot of people out of a job. Well, that's not a tyrant if he's concerned about the people. Is it a people pleaser who says that I'll sacrifice future successes in order to please the people currently in my sphere or my realm of influence? Now, you might be shocked to know this, but it's actually very common for leaders with great potential to keep themselves in the barrel. That the old illustration of the crabs in a bucket, lobsters in a barrel, whatever you want to call them, where one reaches up and gets that one clipper over the edge, that one pincher's out, the legs are starting to go, they were about ready to fall out of the bucket and run off to freedom. And just as they get there, one of the other individuals in the bucket reaches up and snatches that claw and says, no, you can't leave. We can't make it without you. We're all in this bucket together. You got to stay in the bucket. Now, we've all had that moment in life where we felt like we're just right on the edge of a phenomenal breakthrough. And just before we got free, something snatched us back into that reality. That's a test. That's a test. But there are also those who feel like, I've gotten to the edge of the bucket, I'm about ready to tip over the other side, and while I'm hanging here, I'm going to reach back for those in the bottom of the bucket and pull them up with me. Can I tell you, the majority of the time, that's a fail. It doesn't actually work. And it doesn't actually work because the minute you grab one in the bucket, you've got a gravity problem. It's harder to lift them up than it is for them to pull you down. You think I'm kidding? Just try it. I've seen this demonstration done 1,000 times for different reasons, evangelistic, dating, or whatever else. But stand in a chair and try to lift someone off the ground while they're trying to pull you off the chair and see who wins. Because 10 times out of 10, unless you're talking about a grown man who's a bodybuilder and a little bitty somebody who weighs nothing, a toddler or a very small framed person, 10 times out of 10, gravity wins. You start trying to lift somebody up to a higher position who's not putting the effort toward lifting up, but instead pulling you down, they win every single time. And if you're in that leadership capacity where just almost time to get to the next position, but you're still reaching back for those who are not ready to climb out of the bucket. They're not making any effort to go to the next level. They're not making any effort to rise up with you. They're not making any effort toward their own promotion. They're perfectly happy right where they are. They feel completely entitled, perfectly pleased to stay where they are. Here's one of the hardest tests you're going to pass. Are you determined enough tenacious enough, deeply held in your resolve enough to move forward to your next opportunity, to your next assignment, to your greatest potential, knowing that you have to leave behind people that were with you when you got here. And if you do get free, if you do get out of the bucket, get on the ground and start making a break for it, do you have the character to move into that next position, that next opportunity, that next sense of freedom, that I'm not worried about my bills anymore, I've got this new thing, and not do it in a way that you sell out and become a tyrant? Dr. Miles Monroe taught a great lesson that I've only heard from him. I've repeated it several times, but I've never heard anybody else teach it. The phrase is, woe to the nation when the slave becomes king. And the first impression that you get is, yeah, that king, that new king, he's going to get revenge on all the people that were mistreating the slaves. But that's almost never what happens. In fact, what happens is counterintuitive and yet seems to be human nature. And that is, when that one gets out of the bucket, rather than going for help and coming back to destroy the bucket and setting everybody free or tipping the bucket over, they become harder on the people in the bucket that they grew up in the bucket with, that they grew up on the job with, on the block with, in the streets with, in the same community with, playing basketball at 2 o'clock in the morning in the same courts. But now that they're free, now that they're better, now that they've got the job, got the car, got the house, got the promotion, got the notoriety, suddenly they're not like them anymore. And they don't just not help, they create a whole new level of oppression. See, that's that leader who's been tested and tried in the lack, the want, the need, and they've tenaciously fought their way through that, and they've moved into the next level. But now that they've got the promotion, the wealth, the influence, the power, the title, it had nothing to do with those people in the bucket. There's no humanity in that leadership. I got mine. I'm good. I'm not worried about you. When y'all get yours, come see me. Until then, we ain't same. It happens in every culture. In every culture. It's a human thing. The real test is when you get that. Do you have that balance of candor, the ability to tell the truth, to tell it like it is, and compassion? Wisdom doesn't answer the question, do I look fat in this dress? Or does this dress make me look fat? Right? Wisdom doesn't answer that question because there is no good answer to it. That's both candor and compassion, and maybe self-preservation. See, a good leader's got to be able to have the wisdom to know I can tell the truth, and I can do it in a way that demonstrates compassion and concern for other people. I need to be honest, truthful, even when it's hard truth. But I also have to be able to move that in a way that doesn't destroy people. I was working with a small group coaching not too long ago. And in that, someone spoke up and said, you know, here's what I observe, having a unique angle on what you just said. And when they said it, it was a little harsh, it was a little direct. And I just said, well, I don't disagree with your sentiment. What if we reworded it like this? Would it still be true? And the person that I corrected said, I've never had anybody correct me quite like that. Thank you. I've corrected people in a bad way, in a wrong way, many, many times. I've been corrected in a bad way, in a wrong way, many, many times. Those kind of corrections, you feel like somebody's just pounding you on the head. They don't care about you. They don't care about your ego. They don't care about the outcome. They want to know that they had a chance to stand tall and correct you. And if you listen to all of the people who talk about negotiation and leadership, Andrew Bustamante, Chris Voss, Chase Hughes, Brene Brown, if you listen to them talk about negotiation, the one thing the human cannot resist most times, almost every human psyche and almost every culture thrives on this opportunity to correct others. I don't know why it's true. It just is. If I said to you, wow, that is a beautiful chiffon dress you have on. Oh, it's not chiffon, it's linen. If I knew that, I didn't want to ask you what the dress was made of. Just saying the wrong thing makes you want to correct it, makes you want to say the right thing. Hey, I heard you got a raise to $50,000 a month. That's pretty incredible. I don't know, it wasn't 50,000, it was 60 or 50. 50, I'm only getting 30. This natural desire to correct is already in us. The question is, can you have both candor and compassion? Can you correct in a way that allows someone to save face, to not be humiliated or embarrassed, and at the same time, tell the truth? See, that's the test of this shift of power as you continue to rise up. Now, look at elected officials. How many elected officials or appointed officials do you know who, the minute they got that position of power, everything changed? I spent some time with the governor from the Congo. And as we talked, he talked about how the process went. People would get elected to that office, and he said, you know, sometimes only 10 or 12 people show up to vote. What? Like 10 or 12,000? No, 10 or 12. 10 or 12. He said, if you've got a good circle of friends, you can get elected to office pretty fast. I'm like, well, why would they want to elect you to office if there's only 10 or 12 of them? He's like, well, because the rest of them aren't going to listen to you anyway. So then why do you want to get elected to office? He said, oh, because the minute you get elected to office, those 10 or 12 friends that surrounded you, that voted for you, that helped you to get there, they all get their rewards. What does that mean? He said, well, there was a particular story, and this has been decades ago, but he was a first-hand eyewitness to it. He told me this story. I'm relating it, paraphrased so as not to accuse anybody particularly. But there was an elected official who wanted to have the governor's house, the governor's mansion, and came from poverty but got elected into this role. And in fact was living in a shack basically at the time they got elected to office. And as governor, their first place of business, their first point of order was, there needs to be a governor mansion in this region. And there's not one. There's not a house worthy of a governor living in. And so they literally expropriated a school, the entire school campus, as their governor's mansion. And so all of their friends that helped to get them elected became residents of the governor's mansion in the different barracks, et cetera, et cetera. And they literally just kicked the school out altogether and took over the school and called it the governor's mansion and stayed there for quite a while. That's not a proper use of authority. But when that power shifts, if you don't have the character, when that wealth comes, if you don't have the character, when that opportunity to lead, to take charge, to tell other people what to do, when it comes, if you don't have the character, you're going to be off the farm pretty fast. You're going to be doing things that 5 months ago you would have looked at and went, I would never do that. I couldn't tolerate somebody doing that. There's no way. And yet, it's human nature to want to thrive and to rise up and to be that kind of person. It's human nature to get that new position, to get that new elevation, to get that new promotion, to get that new bank account. And suddenly feel like, I'm different than all those people I grew up with. I'm different than all those people I went to school with. I'm different than all those people in that job I just came from. They're not like me. I'm better. I'm different. I got power now. I've got the authority to tell them what to do. That's when your character really comes in. An elected official, a newly promoted CEO, a newly promoted VP, someone who's moved from the ranks into the highest levels of leadership, if they didn't come with humility, integrity, and good basic character to begin with, this promotion is going to destroy them. My challenge for you as leaders is to realize that that's true about you as well. If you find yourself on that cusp You're hanging on the edge of the bucket. You're about to fall to the other side and be absolutely free. You're going to run on with your life into the direction that you want to, and nobody's going to hold you back. If that's where you are right now, if you're on the top edge of the bucket, if you're one approval signature away, one elected official from saying, I endorse, away from your big, giant, enormous future, one book deal away, one podcast interview away, ask yourself, if I make it, if I get that freedom, if I get that promotion, if I get that check, if I land that big deal, will I be a different person on Monday? And I don't just mean by notoriety and title. I mean, will you be a different person inside on Monday? And if the answer is yes, if the answer is, I will be a completely different person in what I buy and where I go and who I hang out with and the kind of people that I talk to and the kind of books that I read, if I'm going to become a different person, maybe put the brakes on just a minute. I grew up redneck. People used to say all the time, drunk doesn't make you a different person, it just makes you magnified of the type of personality you have. If you're a jerk when you're drunk, you're just a drunk jerk. Money's not that different. Power is not that different. Influence is not that different. When you have money, power, influence, or alcohol, you don't become a different somebody, you just become a magnified version of the one that you are now. If the one you are now is not the one you would want to follow, maybe slow down just a minute and become the kind of person that you want to follow. Work on that inner character and that inner strength, because nothing in the world will test you like money, power, and influence. Lack, want, and need do not test you to the same degree. Get that promotion. You're going to get tested. Life is going to get hard. You're going to think it's all good, I'm winning. And then you're going to find out how quickly it goes away. If you have the character to sustain it, talent may get you to the top. Character is what will keep you there. I'm J. Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day. Look, I've been through a lot in my life, she said. The ups and the downs, the highs and the lows, the good and the bad, and I don't know what I'm supposed to be saying to people. Story Power